The strange resilience of a human child is something to behold. Tragedy may change them, trauma may hurt them, terror may grasp them right down to their bones. But somehow, despite not being the strongest race in the galaxy, or the smartest, or the fastest, they are born with reserves of inner will that keeps them carrying on. And as long as they live and breathe, it is at least possible for them to stand up again where any other species' strongest figures has lain down and died. In the brief conflict with the Zenti who would not abide by the treaty, a story was passed down which most have heard by now, of a Zenti cutter who severed a human arm, only for the human to pick up the fallen arm with his good one and beat the weapon wielder to death with the severed limb. A human warrior has been known to fight until they run out of blood, something the Zenti now refer to as Terran murder fuel, and speak with hushed whispers that the humans are not a naturally evolved species. They say rather that Homo sapiens were made by a forerunner race that wanted to engineer the perfect predatory biological war machine. All reasonable academics discount this as simply the whispers of Zenti clusters. But the stories do not exist without reason. Many of their military accomplishments were recorded on video. It was for this reason that my entire exchange class recommended a change to existing laws on interstellar warfare. Never, ever, ever target humans' defenseless mates or children. The recommendation was accompanied not only by all of my class's signatures as subject matter experts, but our professor and all other university exchange students residing on Earth. The recommendation was accompanied by piles of historical records on the degree to which humans will go to undertake revenge for harm done to their young. Until this recommendation was made, laws on warfare pertained chiefly to when war could be made, or what had to be abandoned when a planet was evacuated. Few races consider their young to be significant assets and will simply abandon them to make more. But no race is so invested in their young as humans, not even Dlamisa, who usually lose 1 or 2 per litter and are little inconvenienced by it, but fiercely protect any 3 or fewer survivors. Humans, however, will go to any lengths to avenge even one deceased child if it is well loved. Between that knowledge and their reputation for battle prowess, not to mention the piles of evidence presented, the laws of war were amended before human fleets full of families became common, and all of that I found encapsulated in a single little house in the human homeworld's capital city. Fauve steeled her nerves for the coming of the media expert or public relations specialist, and sat silently at the table, staring all the way to the front door of the house to await his arrival. Her mother stayed close at hand, while her father remained seated outside with the next rotation of security guards. He was engaged in idle chatter of which I only heard a little. Humans sometimes, in my experience, get chatty when they are nervous. Like the noise they make will keep danger at bay, or like they are trying to reassure themselves that everything is normal, even when it is anything but. I almost went out to speak with William and the others myself, but I thought better of it, and went instead into the kitchen, where Fauve lingered over a half-eaten bowl of oatmeal flavored with brown sugar, butter, and milk. She looked at me when I came close, not saying anything. I don't think she trusted that her voice was ready yet. I held out her datapad. "You left this downstairs the other day?" I said, and her hands closed over it. "I didn't try to open it, but I saw the preview messages. Go ahead and take a look." I really wished, when I said that I could smile like a human could. I did at least wag my tail hard enough that I blew a few stray papers off of a nearby chair without noticing it, until I heard the scrape of paper over wood. Rebecca went to pick them up, while Fauve gasped and opened the datapad to read the messages. She didn't complain about my having seen the previews. I doubted she cared. Her fingers were shaking while she opened up the pad, and she had to try 3 times to put in the code before it worked and the screen lit up. "Please call off your dogs. I didn't mean any harm. I was just trolling. I didn't realize there was a real problem. I'm not a bad guy. I was just angry because he's my friend." She read the messages out loud from the various sources to come her way. Notably, she skipped over the threats of violence toward her person, or myself, or her family that were almost certainly buried within. I could read her thoughts in her eyes. Evidence. That was what she thought. When Fauve first tested me by throwing that ball that, on thinking about it, I really want to chase again, she showed me something of her character. She likes to test things, including people. She watches, she studies, and where a few days ago those threats of violence might have upset her, the fear she once almost certainly felt had been changed into anger, hatred, and a desire for retribution. More importantly, When she saw the pleas for mercy from some and the threats from others, I could see her come to the correct conclusion. "They're scared," Fauve said when her mother set the papers aside and looked her way. "Good. They should be scared. It's right for them to be scared. It's their turn to be scared. But I wonder what happened exactly." Rebecca was the one to answer her. If the government took a special interest, perhaps some home visits, perhaps taking over their systems and giving them a text-based warning about what was going to happen if they continued. Maybe a few arrests. Things will get ugly for some of them. Uglier than their faces in the mirror, if I'm guessing. "Good," Fauve said, just as the front door cracked open and William announced in a bold voice, "He's here. It's time." The media expert was a very small man of great age. His hair was very white, what there was of it at least. He had only a few wisps remaining on his head. His face was filled with wrinkles, and he walked with a stoop that was only made possible by a cane. His clothing was a crisply pressed white suit and tie, with shining white leather shoes so well polished I could see my face in them. He was any other successful old man at a glance, but his eyes were sharp and keen. He ignored me at first, which was strange as most humans gave me at least a second glance, and instead his eyes had a laser focus on the waiting 14-year-old girl. "Oh yes, you'll do marvelously," he said as he hobbled toward the table. Rebecca looked at him with a single skeptical eyebrow raised. "You are the media expert?" she asked, and the old man cackled. "I don't look like much, do I? But—" He raised his cane in one hand and straightened up at once. He then reached up to his forehead and peeled away what I first thought was skin, and then dropped it onto the table. "That is the first lesson," he pronounced. It was a wig. Beneath the wig was still gray hair, but it was lustrous, thick white, and his last few steps were a clear, confident stride. He yanked a chair back and sat down while Fauve and Rebecca looked at him with mutual disbelief. "Appearance, my girl," he said, and shook his polished wooden cane, "is more powerful than anything you can imagine. People think lies are the most effective thing, but people forget words, even true ones. And even when someone remembers lies, the details fade over time. But people remember what they see first." "This is moving awfully fast," Fauve said, leaning back in her chair, while their expert leaned forward, just as William took a seat beside him. "I suppose so. But that's how things go. Fast, child. Fast. But I guess we should have an introduction. Percival Terrence Barnum, at your service," he said, and extended his hand across the table first to Fauve, then to her mother, and finally to me. "I've been handling press conferences since before your father's father was born. Unfortunately," he looked Fauve up and down, "there's not much time for a makeover. Ideally, we'd make you look even younger. The younger they are, the more the crowd loves a victim. Youth and innocence. Everybody remembers having it. If they're lucky, at least. Everybody decent wants to protect it. Everybody who remembers it fondly. And when somebody tries to ruin both, people hate the ones who do it. So if we had time, I'd take you in, get some pigtails done and some younger clothes. With a little makeup, we could make you look 5 years younger. But we don't have time for that." "No," Fauve said at once. "Even if we did, no." She shook her head vigorously. Her loose, wavy hair bounced behind her back. Her parents developed deep frowns and traded silent stares between each other. Myself, I didn't know what to think. "It's immaterial anyway, so there's no reason to convince you. And that's lesson 2. He brought the tip of his cane down twice against the floor, creating a loud double crack. "Focus on the immediate. Anyone who isn't your ally out there is going to try to distract you. If you get sidetracked, they control the narrative. They control the story. They control you. You have to remain focused on the subject. Don't get distracted. These press conferences don't last forever. Time is limited, and some people out there will want to waste it. If a question doesn't pertain to the event, or you don't know the answer, you move it along. Understand, doll?" Fauve pursed her lips, and I watched her lean forward with renewed interest in the old man. "I'm not a doll," Fauve snapped, and the cane tapped the floor 3 times more, echoing around the room and off the walls. "That's lesson 3. Do not get angry. Lose control of yourself up there, and they win. Make an angry face, scowl, shout, and the next thing you know, you're the next incel community meme. Do you want that?" Percival asked, and tapped his cane 4 times while Fauve thought. "Lesson 4. Be quick. You plan out what you're going to say before you say it. We're going to rehearse your answers before we leave. People hate waiting, and they'll assume you're formulating lies." Mr. Barnum's lessons lasted for 2 straight hours, grilling Fauve on how she'd answer questions that, from what I knew of humans, nobody should be asking children. But he remained steadfast, persistent, and unwavering until his voice gave out. He was barely able to whisper by the time he was done. "I think I damaged the end of my cane on that last lesson," he said, and with one quick flick of his wrist, he brought the long, smooth stick up and cocked his head to examine the tip. "May I have some water, Mrs. Walker?" he asked, and Rebecca finally rose to her feet. She put a glass beneath the faucet and turned it on. While the water was rushing into the vessel, Percival said with a whisper, "One small crack. I thought so. Time to get another one, I suppose?" "Over one crack?" I asked. It seemed wasteful to me, but the old man nodded. "Yes, I'm still pretty spry for a man my age, but time takes a toll on these old bones, and I do need one of these now and again," he said, and put the tip of his cane back to the floor. "One little crack, and the whole cane is just waiting to fall apart. A little weight the wrong way on it, then the crack will become a snap, and old Percival will come crashing down like the tree that was chopped down to make this thing." He tapped a finger against the wooden knob-shaped handle. "That's all it takes, just one crack, and the entire thing is just waiting to be broken. That's your last lesson, and your best weapon. Be that crack," he said, and when Rebecca handed him the water, he drank greedily, gulping it down until the glass was empty, and he slammed the base down on the table. "Thank you. That was wonderful," he said, and started to rise. William and Rebecca opened their mouths to object, but I beat them to it. "Wait, what about me? Aren't there things I need to know?" I exclaimed. My tail was stiff, and then curled as the prospect of the inevitable hit home. "You were listening this whole time, weren't you, my alien friend? What else do you need?" Percival asked, and shook his head. "No, you need nothing. In fact, if I thought you'd have obeyed my wishes, I wouldn't have had you here for any of this, or barely any at most. You're an alien. Nobody expects you to act just like a human. Just be yourself up there. If you look coached, you'll either confuse people or make them suspicious." It made too much sense for me to argue with him, and he pushed himself up from the table. "Now come on, the car's waiting outside still, and I'm sure my driver is getting bored. We need to head to the conference, and we need to be gone 10 minutes ago." With that, we stood up together and followed the old man toward the door, going to whatever end it might lead to.